Good evening. This is a public meeting of the Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for July 22nd, 2013. Tonight we have one petition before us under new business. The petition is ZB 2013-21. The petition is a special permit. The applicant is Marsha Hebert. The property is located at 246 University Ave. The petition to add additional paved area for a driveway without maintaining usable open space requirements pursuant to section 4.5.3, 5.3.2 of the zoning ordinance. Is there a representative of 246 University Ave here, please?
Yes, there is.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Ed Maloney. I'm an attorney in Lowell. I represent the owner of the property, Marsha Hebert, who is here as well, and she's available to answer any questions that the board might have. This is a petition to increase some parking for the residents of 246 University Avenue. The property abuts also Fifth Avenue, and the parking would be off of Fifth Avenue. The request is for a 16.5-foot by 50-foot area, which is shown on a plot plan that I believe the board has for its review. And what this will enable the property to do is to maintain a parking area for 3 vehicles on the site. This is a mixed-use property. There are 2 commercial businesses on the property, and that would be the Marsha Hebert Electrolysis, as well as there's a antique and used furniture business as well. There are 5 parking spots, which I think the board has seen from the photographs that were submitted with the petition, in front of the commercial properties. But these 5 spots are used by the owners of the commercial properties, and they're also used by customers, and they have a thriving business. Both businesses are very busy, and they have a number of customers who are there on a regular basis, making these parking spots unavailable to the residential tenants of the building. The building also has on the 2nd floor a 3-bedroom apartment. There are 3 tenants in that apartment. There are 3 tenants who have vehicles in that apartment. There is also an apartment on the 3rd floor. That's a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 tenants, and they also own 2 vehicles. They have to find parking on the street. There's no parking available, off-street parking, either on University Ave or on Fifth Avenue available to them. So they're required to find parking on the street, thereby adding to an already congested situation on Fifth Avenue as well as surrounding streets. So the purpose of this petition on behalf of the owner is to provide some off-street parking for this property for the residential tenants, thereby alleviating some parking issues on the street. There's the neighbors. I'm not sure if there's any neighbors objecting to this petition, but I do have for the board's consideration, if the board would like to take a look at these letters, there's a letter that I just received this evening right now from Gloria Salazar, who is at 117 Crawford Street, which is 1 house away from this property. It actually abuts the property. And her letter consists of support for this proposal because it does help her and her property in terms of relieving some congestion on Fifth Avenue on-street parking. There's also a letter I have here from Monique Perrin at 106 Crawford Street, and her points are the same. If the board would like to take a look at these letters, I'd be happy to submit them.
Great, thank you.
Should I continue?
Sure, yep.
I think it's also important to point out that this property, in this section that is asked to be used for paving and for parking, was always paved until 2006. Now, the owner purchased the property in 1995, and at the time, this section was paved and was used for parking for the property. And then the property, I believe, was used for parking, or this section of the property was used for parking for many years before that. The owner, when she was living there, didn't need the parking. She was the only one there. So she pulled it up and planted grass there for use by her pet and otherwise. So she's trying to, by virtue of this petition, return this paved area or this section that she would like to pave for the use of the tenants and to also just revert this use back to what it was for many, many years before 2006. You know, she does have the support of the neighbors. And I think also I should probably submit to you, I don't know if the board has the aerial photographs that I obtained of the property from 2004 and 2008, and I can submit these to the board if you don't have them. But it shows clearly that in 2004, by this GIS aerial photograph, that this section of the property was paved. And then I have a 2008 photograph where it shows that it's not paved. If the board would like to take a look at these in support of my suggestion that this property was for a long time, this section of the property for a long time was used for parking.
Sure. Okay, take that.
I did submit those with
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure that...
Great, thank you. Yep. If you want to just give us a minute to
Sure.
take a look at what you submitted. Okay, if you'd like to continue.
Well, in summation, what we would say is then we're also aware of a letter that the board received from the city engineer's office talking about there's some issues that they have some concerns about runoff, rain runoff on the property if this area is paved. And also they have concerns about the lack of a permeable surface on the property. And in consideration of that, the owner can probably put in a permeable area at the end of the driveway, which would stretch basically the 16.5 feet by 3 feet and leave that as a permeable area, and then she would still be able to get the 3 parking spots beyond that. So she would offer that as a consideration to the engineer's office. And she recognizes, too, that she has to work with them to get the parking up to spec if it's approved by the Board of Appeals. So we would say that, you know, it's a very congested area in terms of parking, especially UMass Lowell is about a quarter of a mile away at the most. There are a lot of students who park in that neighborhood. There are a lot of students who have cars. UMass Lowell is getting bigger all the time. We expect that there'll be even more and more students looking for housing, looking for parking. So this is an attempt to help out her tenants and also to help out, she believes, the immediate neighborhood on 5th Avenue, on University Ave, and also help out the overall section of the city to address some off-street parking. She'll be taking 3 vehicles that are currently parking on the street and get them off the street and onto a parking spot on the property. Okay. And I'm available to answer any questions, and Ms. Hebert is as well.
Well, I'll ask a couple of questions just to start, and then there may or may not be someone here to speak. So I just want to make sure what I heard is correct. The current owner has owned the property since '95, is that what you
Yes.
said? And the current owner lived there at one time?
Yes, she did.
Okay. When did the rental units, what year did those start?
The present rental,
The residential ones
Yeah.
upstairs?
they started in January 2013.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, she lived there until December 2012, and,
The second floor I occupied till December.
Ma'am, if,
oh, okay,
she's going to have to come to the podium if she wants to
fine.
address the board.
just speaking of the mic.
Okay. I moved out of that apartment on the second floor in just last December, December 1st.
And the tenants.
And my tenants, I've always had tenants upstairs. So that's how I purchased the building.
Right,
I've
so
always rented out
January
the third floor.
2013 is when you started having lease arrangements with the tenants, right?
Correct.
Upstairs,
Correct.
okay. And the commercial properties downstairs, commercial space downstairs, when did those start?
Billy Geekus has rented from me for over 15 years, and I've been an electrologist for over 23, I believe. I've been in that, I've probably been there over 21 years.
Okay, so you're running your own business out of the...
Correct, I'm an electrologist and an esthetician, yes, I
Yep.
am.
Okay. What's the hours of operation for the businesses?
Billy is open Monday through Saturday, anytime from 10, sometimes he leaves at 3 or 4, and I'm usually there Monday through Saturday also. And I could start anytime at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I could finish like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, it depends on what time my last client or patient is there. I just kind of go by appointment.
Yep. Okay. That's all I have at this point. do you have anything else you want to add at this point?
No, that's fine.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the public. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak in opposition? In opposition? Opposition? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone here like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. Going to open up to the board. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple questions regarding the site plan. So there's a paved surface along Fifth Ave right now that exists. It's unclear how many spaces that are able to use that space.
5.
There's 5, okay. And that space is only 16 feet deep, is that correct?
Let's look at it's approximately 16 feet deep, yeah.
So I think a standard parking space for the city is 18 feet deep, is that correct?
I wouldn't know that offhand.
That's correct, 18 feet.
18 feet deep. So they're not compliant with standard parking spaces from a size standpoint today?
I think that that's an issue that was raised by the engineer's office. I'm aware of that, and we're aware of that issue, but it's been that way for probably 40 years, these parking spots. It's been paved in that manner for a long, long time.
It's true, but they're impacting the sidewalk. And so in that neighborhood, I'm sure there's a lot of people that do walk. And so parking spaces that overlap the sidewalk create a poor environment for a neighbor to use. It's not really being a responsible community member to be impacting the city public way by having cars on it, in my opinion at least. So is there any way you want to address that situation at all?
We don't really have anything to offer there. The parking is needed. It's always been needed. It's always been a commercial business being run out of there. So to remove the parking, in effect, that would remove the parking for the commercial businesses, and it would be very detrimental to these businesses, obviously. It would be detrimental to the neighborhood as well, because if the businesses were able to stay there, then it would create a lot of on-street parking on that street. Further making the problem worse on the street. And our purposes for seeking this special permit is to increase the off-street parking. And if we were to remove the parking that's already there, then we're not really accomplishing much. And we don't think that it is any kind of problem for people walking on the street, you know, and walking on the sidewalk either.
Cars parked in the sidewalk isn't a problem for people
Well,
walking in the
I
sidewalk?
don't believe they're parked in the sidewalk.
I believe we have a photograph of a vehicle in front of the property that shows.
Yeah, is that a truck that you're looking at?
It's a vehicle that probably needs an 18-foot wide long space, which is why the city has an ordinance asking for all the requiring all parking to be 18 feet
Right.
long. So there's a reason for it, and you're not complying with it. So I just want to be clear that we have non-compliant 5 spaces on there right now. And you have 2 rental units that require, 4 parking spaces each? 4 parking spaces total, 2 and 2?
Well-
Per zoning, is that right?
Well, there are 2 rental units, and there are 5 tenants in all.
So what's the total parking required for the building per zoning? Do you know offhand?
I don't think there's any requirement for off-street parking, to my knowledge.
It is two spaces per unit.
So it's 4 parking spaces required for the property per zoning,
Correct.
correct? So per zoning, you're not required to have any parking for the commercial spaces. They're on-street parking, I think, is allowed.
Mm.
So we need to satisfy 4 spaces, I think, per zoning on the site. And we need to satisfy the requirement for green space on the site. And I think that the neighborhood, just by your aerial photography, shows a lot of responsible citizens having green space following the ordinances of the city, which needs to have a place for the drainage to go. I mean, your idea of having all the pavement go into the city stormwater system, which does work for you, but it overloads the system if everyone did it. That's why we have an ordinance asking for green space, so we can recharge the groundwater like responsible community members. And I think it's wonderful that you did that in your backyard and satisfy the requirements of the city zoning. I can't support a neighbor that isn't being responsible to the community and choosing to have more of an impact on the drainage system that is already overloaded. And you should be responsible and follow the requirement. I don't see the hardship either, because you're only responsible to have 4 spaces. So I don't understand why there's a need. You already have 5 spaces that don't comply.
Well, you know, these are spaces, we would argue that they're non-conforming uses. They've been there an awful long time. Marcia Hebert, the current owner, didn't put those spaces there. They were there when she bought the property in 1995. And they've been utilized, you know, for commercial purposes for a long, long time.
We're talking about making an improvement to the site. We're talking about solving a problem with parking and making an improvement to the site. I think that's what you're trying to do, but I'm trying to understand the hardship here, and I understand the hardship to have parking above and beyond what zoning requires. You already have frontage on a street that's in excess of 80 feet on one street, and I think, is there parking allowed, off-street parking on University Ave?
There isn't any to this property.
Is off-street parking allowed on University Ave? I mean, I'm sorry, parallel parking on University Ave. I think that's allowed there too, correct?
On-street parking?
On-street
I
parking.
think so, yes.
And so that's another 50 feet. So you have, between the 2 sides, 100 and, almost 140 feet of length, which is about 70 spaces if you were to do just on-street parking, which I don't see the hardship. And I think that it's important to have detention, have water recharging the groundwater, and you're not providing a way to do that. So I don't see the hardship here. I'm struggling with this, and I really think that you're only required to have 4 spaces per zoning. You already have space on street for 7 spaces if you wanted to, and you are required to have the green space, and you're asking to do away with that. I can't support this, I'm sorry. I'm going to listen to my colleagues, though.
I'll point back to, this property has been managed this way and operated this way for many, many years, and except for the fact that Ms. Hebert did remove the parking in the first place. But aside from that, it's been that way for quite a while, and I would point your attention to the letters from the direct abutter especially, who says that it would help her a lot.
But it's important to have the ability to recharge the groundwater, and if we overload our sewage system, we're not doing that. And we need to provide a recharge. That's why the ordinance is the way it is. And you haven't done that. I understand history, but history is full of mistakes. That's why we have improvements. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think Dennis makes some good points. There's not much more to say to it. This is a neighborhood that, there's small lots, they're 4,000 square foot lots, I think is what, maybe a little bigger is what this one is. There's not a whole lot of room to park, and there's a lot of cars up there. There's a lot of multi-unit buildings, a lot of commercial kind of tucked into multi-unit buildings. So I don't know what the situation is of the day. I went to the university, so I know what the parking is like. I think it's getting better, hopefully, with their new parking garage on North Campus there. But I'm sure it's still an issue with students, multiple students living in some of these residential units. But I guess to add on to a little bit of what Dennis was saying, those front parking spots that exist now, I wonder if there's a way to bring them somewhat into more conforming, which might mean giving up a space on that side, but maybe angling them or something that can get them closer to that 18-foot where we're not impeding the public access. There's a bump out, so maybe two spots on each side might be a solution that might help that concern of the DPD. And then secondly, I don't have a huge concern about parking behind that building, but I'd like to see it done with a pervious surface, maybe pavers or something of that, which would allow the stormwater issue and some of that to go away. It may be a little bit more of a costly scenario, but it's a fairly small space that might eliminate that concern. So those are my thoughts on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the petitioner was willing to have some green space at the end of the driveway.
Yes.
Could you just touch on that a little bit?
Well, she would suggest, and this is when we received the engineer's report as well, and she would suggest at the end of the driveway. And do you have a copy of the plot plan
Yes,
there
I do,
in front of you?
me.
We would suggest at the end of the driveway, at the top here, and I've got it highlighted here, and I've got copies as well that are highlighted, and it would be 16.5 feet by 3 feet at the end of the driveway. And she could do that and have a pervious area and still be able to get 3 spots in that section on the left. So that would be her plan, but she's willing to work with the engineer's office, and as mentioned, I think she's got to get a paving plan approved by the engineer's office, and perhaps some of these issues could be addressed with them when the time comes.
So it'd be fair to say you'd be looking at grass and some plantings of some sort, some type of plantings?
I think we could do that, sure.
Okay. All right, no further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Corey?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I was out there this afternoon, and the applicant happened to be in the property, and she told me the whole history of it, as we all heard this evening, how it was pavement at one time, and how the parking along Fifth Avenue there that abuts up to the property has been going on. And the point I'd like to make is that it looks like when the street was paved, it was paved at the same time over the, I don't even, if the sidewalk was there at one time, but it looks to me that there was no sidewalk there at any time, and it was paved when the street was paved. So naturally, she purchased the property in '95, thinking she had these 5 spots. I think, her intent is here tonight to do the right thing. Okay, she is completely surrounded by multifamilies in a college campus-type setting neighborhood. And these cars are all over the street. They park anywhere. They're putting barrels out. I see there's signs in front of her neighbor's yard, no parking, police take notice. I mean, you can tell there's a pretty hairy environment there going on. Not right now today, but when these kids get back to school, it clicks right into gear. So, I mean, she's trying to go through the proper channels there to increase parking to get her tenants off the street. And that not only helps her, yes, she benefits, most certainly, but so do the abutters. And to have her come out of here with less than what she walked out of here with would be an injustice in my mind. Now, I know we're about 2 feet shy on a legitimate parking space. You know, you've been using these for as long as she's been in the building, correct? Even longer, many, many years prior to that.
That's right.
You know, I don't know if we can stripe them. If it does get through, it's gonna be new hot top, and what's gonna happen with all, that gonna be paved as well? If this does, hypothetically speaking, or alongside of the building, or hot topped, or what's gonna go on there?
The new section?
No, Fifth Ave, the long Fifth Avenue, the 5 spots I'm talking about.
I don't think there's any plan to touch that. I think that's going to remain the way it is. All right.
No, I was gonna seal coat it to make it all look really nice. So if we asphalt it, then I wanted to pull the seal coating on and put new lines.
Okay,
and
so
just
it'll
make it
match, okay, all right.
correct.
Okay, well, I like that. I don't know, as Kevin mentioned earlier about angling them, maybe we could work with the engineers department if that will, you know, label them compact. You know, a large truck or a van is gonna encroach a little bit. So let's see if there's a way we can either angle it or come up with some sort of a plan with the engineer's office. I'm not the expert here, of how you can save those spots. Because, you know, you get a total of 5 residents, they all have their own vehicles. The 2 business owners have vehicles, and their customers have vehicles.
Correct.
These cars have to go somewhere. So I'm trying to get as much off the street as we can in a neighborhood like this. I mean, I love green space as much as the next person, but parking is paramount in this neighborhood in my mind. I'm sorry. I mean, I do support it. I think you're trying to do the right thing here, and you walked into an existing condition of using those spots, and you're trying to increase your parking. So now, as Gary mentioned earlier, in the rear, and this was paved up until 2006, I might add, and I don't believe there was any problems with stormwater drainage or anything at that time. Not, this helps any situation, it does not. But I don't know, a 3-foot buffer would be suffice in the rear. You know, you'd have to go on the engineer's comments. It might end up being a 5 or 6-foot buffer, who knows, to offset, you know, this stormwater drainage. So, you know, I think you need the parking there. You're doing the right thing. I mean, I'd love to see green space at the same time, but your home is well-maintained there. You're on 2 good businesses. You're in a neighborhood where, you know, I can tell, geez, I wouldn't want that on anybody. In that situation, that parking situation come the fall must be horrid. So I do support it. Anytime I can get cars off the street in a congested neighborhood, I'll always try and work with the petitioner. But I do support it in the event that, you know, it needs some fine-tuning with the engineer's office. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you there. Much needs to be done here, but I do support it. I don't know what the solution is tonight, Mr. Chairman, and the other board members like to chime in, but I'd like to see, you'll be bringing 2 or 3 cars off the street onto your property. You have the room, and I'd like to see it get done. So, again, Mr. Chairman, I don't have an ultimate solution here tonight, but I do support it, and I'd like to see you work with the engineer's office on proper green space to offset drainage and keep those 5 spots intact, whether it's angled, striped, I don't know, labeled compact, I don't know, but she needs those as well. So I do support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corey. Dan?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, your property is on a traditional mixed-use location. Would you say during your peak periods of your business, like how many cars would go in within a day, like in and out, parking on the street, or?
In and out, I mean, Billy owns a storefront, so it could be any amount of people. Saturdays are very busy, Fridays are very busy for him. I only take 1 person at a time generally. Sometimes I can have another person waiting in my waiting area. But, I mean, it just could be a number of people. We've both been in business for a long time. So we have very established businesses. You know, we both do very well. So it could be a lot, you know, and I have the 3 kids on the 2nd floor, I have the 2 kids on the, you know, the 3rd floor. So, and my neighbors do complain to me, and as you can see in one of the letters, one of my neighbors is nice enough to let me park over there, but I can't park there when her husband or her daughter comes home or whatever. I'm trying to, you know, be very considerate of my neighbors. I've been there for over 20 years. I like all my neighbors. We all get along, but there is a parking issue, and it's not fair that my tenants or my, you know, patrons are parking in front of their homes. You know, and there's driveways, there's things like that. The green space that I made for my daughter's chihuahua 6 or 7 years ago isn't being utilized at all. You know, it's just sitting there. My tenants don't use it at all. You know, we really need the parking. It's a huge issue, and come the wintertime, I can't park on University Avenue. They have a parking ban in the wintertime.
No, you're right.
You know, and then they put the snow right on the corner. So it's difficult. It's a huge issue over there, especially being on the corner.
No, I agree, and I think for me, the biggest issue is kind of safety. You know, if the more cars you can get off the street into the actual parking lot, probably the better for not just your patrons and your tenants, but the whole neighborhood. So
Absolutely.
I understand what Mr. McCarthy is saying, but you know, I think this petition is something that is needed for this property, and it'll make the neighborhood a little more safer. And I think that's the bottom line for me. Is, you know, it makes everyone more secure and safe. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Van. So I have a couple more questions. So you mentioned you run a business and Mr. Geekus is there. You both parking on the site when you come to work?
Yes.
Do you have any opportunity to park on the street instead of parking
I
in?
asked my neighbor, yes, I can go down to Crawford Street again if her husband's not home or her daughter's not home. I try to find other parking. The family next to me, the Salazars, they have quite a few people living there in a 3-family home. There's not a lot of, you know, room for parking. They put a no parking sign up. I have to be respectful of them. There's just, you know, there's not a lot of parking there. It's
So
really.
did I hear there's public parking on University Ave or not?
I'm sorry?
Joe?
I'm not sure myself, but I believe there is
I'm
public
assuming there
parking
is.
on
I
University
didn't see
Ave.
any signs posted that says there's no parking.
I believe there's public parking on
Okay.
University Ave in that
Right.
area.
And I know the school's right across the street, I understand that, but there is public parking, at least on University Ave.
Yes, but some of my neighbors do have those signs I think you obtain from the city that, you know, say no parking or
Yep.
reserved parking or whatever it might say.
Okay. So it seems to me like you live there, you bought it in 95, you lived there, and you had 2 businesses, so you occupied the top,
I occupied the 2nd floor, so I only have 1 vehicle myself. I'm a single
Okay.
mother, I occupy.
but you were there from 95, and then 2006, a decision was made to add some green space, correct?
Correct.
Put a yard in,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So, end of 2012, you make a decision, you're going to leave, and now you want to rent 2 units. So because of renting 2 units, you've decided that and I was trying to understand this when I went to the site, you have a couple of signs that say, you know, authorized parking only, or unauthorized, or something to that effect. And when I looked at it, I said, well, there seems to be more focus on the commercial than the tenants living upstairs.
No, I
And-
have those unauthorized.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
let me finish. So when I looked at that, and then I looked at the petition, I said, okay, so obviously we need more parking. I don't think anybody in this board is against additional parking in the city. But when I looked at it, I said, okay, so there seems to be a focus on the commercial. We need more parking because we have 2 tenants now. And now we're going to take some green space, and we're going to add 3 parking spots. That's what you're proposing, right?
Correct.
So you're going to stack 3 cars in there for the 2 residential units, correct?
I would like to, yes.
So you're going to have to, so by stacking them, you're going to have to coordinate who's parking where. I don't know what the relationships are, the 2 residential units, but just based on the pure facts, it's kind of like we're jamming a lot of stuff into one building. It's in a TMU zone, that's not the point, but it seems like the commercial seems to be getting a lot more focus than the residential. And both businesses are service-related businesses. I think Van was kind of asking about, you know, who might be coming in there. You mentioned that you take one client at a time, so I'm assuming you're claiming that you have 5 spaces. When I pulled into the unit, excuse me, the parking lot, I actually backed in, and when the city made the position about overhanging the sidewalk, my car was definitely overhanging the sidewalk. Now, I know there's a dispute whether it's a sidewalk, there's no curbing, it's basically drive in, drive out. And I understand it's been there for many years, but I kind of keep going back to, we're doing this because we've rented 2 units now. And all I heard is that the tenants need some parking. So I'm really struggling with, why are we doing this and what's the real intention? I understand it's to get cars off the street. But you said your 2 businesses are open from Monday through Saturday. I didn't hear hours of operation, but I would think it's somewhere between 9 and 5, I would assume. Kevin made I think a pretty good point when he was asking or talking about angling the parking. Because I have to agree with Dennis. I think there's a concern about how the cars are parked. I know there's history there, but let's be honest, the cars have to stick out. There's no if, and, or buts. But I'm not sure how the angling, how we would work that. Joe, I don't think we've entertained this before, but is there really a way to take the current space as it's situated and try to angle some parking? I would assume by angling, we're probably going to lose spaces, which we aren't considering official spaces to begin with.
Right, most likely by angling the spaces, you still have to maintain the 18 feet in length
Yeah.
anyway. So you would still have that issue in length, and by angling them, there's the possibility that you could lose a space or 2, depending on what that angle is.
And I know the angling then creates other issues about how you pull in and all that other stuff, but I thought it was a valid point that Kevin brought up. I also thought it was a valid point that Kevin brought up regarding the pavers, as opposed to just hot topping. Because again, as my good friend Dennis talked about the green space, you know, that it is an issue for the city. So if we look at that, based on the plan you threw here, it's nothing but paving surrounding a building. I know we talked about doing some plantings at the bottom, but, you know, let's be honest, it's a corner lot, and it's going to look like nothing but pavement, up, down, all around.
Let him finish.
I guess, you know, this one is kind of a tough one for me, because if I look at 11.3.2, which talks about, you know, granting the special permit, the adverse effects of the proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts of the city or the neighborhood in view of the particular characteristics of the site and the proposal in relation to that site. You know, 1 minute I'm all set to, you know, maybe talk about some conditions here. The next minute I'm really struggling with this whole proposition of what we're trying to do. I'm not sure if there's any other way to get around the commercial part of it. I just don't see it constant. You need 5 parking spots, because it sounds to me like when you lived there, you ran a business, plus Mr. Geekus was there, and the parking that you had was fine. And you actually turned it over and put green space in. And now, because you're going to rent out 2 units, now you want to put some more paving in to take care of the residential units. So that's kind of what I'm struggling with. I know each of the board members has a different feeling on this, but I'm not really sure, based on what's been presented so far, I'm not really sure what I'm going to accept or what we maybe need to talk about, Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now I'm a little unclear on, so when you purchased it in 1995, you still had 2 rental units upstairs, correct?
Correct.
A 3 and a 2. You occupied one of them?
Yes.
So you always rented one of them?
Yes.
Okay, so now You moved out, now you're renting the other, more or
Correct.
less, okay? Which is probably the smaller one, I like to think, is,
The larger.
it's a larger one, a three-bedroom?
I occupied a
Okay.
three-bedroom, yes.
All right, yeah, so, okay, so, yeah, which, they're gonna need 3 spaces, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right, so you always, you had the 2 businesses, always lived in one and rented one. Now, you have moved and you're renting the other, okay? But it's just, I know, Mr. Chairman, and to your point, to Dennis's, I know the city and green space, we all love green space here. But you can drive from the beginning of University Ave to the Dracut line, and you're not gonna see a blade of grass, in all honesty. This is a very congested neighborhood. I'm thinking not only, yes, it helps her, she's the benefactor here tonight, no, but so is the abutters. These cars, she ends up with less spots than she has now by coming in, paying a few $1,000s for application and drawings, and come up with less than what she had, and end up with more cars on the street, is an injustice to the petitioner and the neighborhood. So it's just, I mean, if this was a rural neighborhood, I wouldn't be sacrificing 1 inch of green space. But this is a highly congested neighborhood, a college campus atmosphere, where parking is at a premium. They all have, again, no parking signs, every one of her abutters has it. And I'm willing to bet if you go there in the fall, there's probably barrels and sawhorses out there in front of the yard, like you see in some of the neighborhoods in the fall and winter. So, I mean, I try to use common sense the best I can, rather than, heavy on green space or parking, but I go by the needs of the neighborhood, and the needs of this neighborhood are parking. So I'd like to see it get done. I don't have, I mean, if it gets angled parking on the Fifth Ave and we lose a spot but gain 3, then so be it. I'm fine with that. But I'd like to see as many cars as we can off the street. Again, working closely with the engineer's office, so maybe if we can relay it to them, see what they can come up with, Mr. Chairman, because I think, as you alluded to, all the board members seem to be on a different level here. Let's see what maybe they can come up with and come back to the board. I don't know, that's just my recommendation. Thank you very much.
Well, I guess the only comment I'll make is I think you made my point when the petitioner lived there and they also rented, so now it's the same thing. So that's why I don't understand why the hard space was taken out and put in with a lawn, and now we're gonna come back and put a driveway back in there. So we always had 2 units, 2 people living up there, 2 different units with people living there. But it seemed to be okay to put grass in before, now we want to replace that. I don't know what the reason was, I wasn't there. So speaking to the angled parking, the other thing was, when I pulled in there, the entrance to to your business, ma'am, there seems to be a spot, at least the striping is very, you'd almost got to get on top of it to see if there's any striping there. But there's actually, if you look at it, there's a spot that's right in front of the doorway, which didn't make much sense to me, which again pushes the car further out towards that sidewalk. Just another example of, it's great to have the parking, but if it's sticking out all the time. But I couldn't understand, it's right in front of that entranceway. And let's be honest, I think you have stairs in front there to get into your business. So again, to say you have 5, I guess you do, but I don't know, I have to back up what Dennis is coming with this. Any other comments for any other board members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I'm doing the math in my head here, and you moved out of the 2nd floor apartment, and you added 3 cars, even though 2 is always required by zoning. So there's a net increase of 2 cars for the use of the site, I think. And I'm not sure your hours of operation, I'm not sure if one of those people is not there when you're working and you're not there when they're home, maybe, I'm not sure. So, in doing the math here, you have an obligation to provide 500 square feet of green space, which is basically 30 feet of the backyard. So 20 feet of the backyard could be paved, and you could add 2 spaces and still satisfy the zoning, I think, if I do the math correctly. So it would be basically those 2 spaces for those 2 additional tenants that you just added on the 2nd floor. So, and then I don't think you would even need a special permit, because you'd satisfy zoning, I think. I'm just trying to find a win-win.
I'm not sure I'm not sure the math is
So
correct.
500 square feet, I believe, is what we are looking for the site.
Yes.
And 16 and a half by 30 would be roughly 500 square feet. And the site is about 50 feet wide. That would leave 20 feet for length, more than 18. And you could add the 2 spaces in the green space, in that space along Fifth Ave. And just move your fence back to be parallel with the house, basically, or so. Maybe, it's just a thought.
I understand the math now, but she just needs the additional parking, and
Well, that would be-
we're agreeable to working with the engineer's office on
Right.
the open space and putting together a plan. From their letter to the board, they talk about how she has to submit a stormwater report to them to make sure to address Mr. McCarthy's concerns about the runoff. And then in terms of the open space, perhaps we could work with the engineer's office to put together something satisfactory to meet both the parking needs as well as the open space needs. I'm not sure the 30 feet by 16 feet would be enough space for 2 spots. I don't think it would.
So, I mentioned about the signage that's currently on the building regarding parking. So if you have the new parking put in, you putting up any other signage? In other words, how would somebody know that that's residential? Because I keep coming back to this residential and commercial, because I would think if your tenants had company come over and it was after 6 p.m., I'm sure they're going to pull into the side of the building.
Yeah, go.
The signage that you're speaking of, that authorized, that is in regards to St. John Dock School across the street. Because I also have them parking over in my parking lot when they pick their kids up, when they drop them off. So I work that out with Sister Priscilla to put that signage up, so I don't have, parents taking up my parking. That's not for my business, that's not for my tenants. That is directed towards the school. My parking lot that I pay commercial taxes on is for my tenants, my patients, my clients, Billy's customers, not for the school. The school should be able to provide for themselves. They don't have any parking, and the school is huge.
Yep.
I have, parents parking everywhere. This is a big parking issue. I'm not trying to, be sneaky. I'm coming in front of you. I'm really trying to work with you to get parking. It's not just for my business. It's not just for my tenants. It's everyone in the neighborhood is suffering because we're all parking all over the place. Jeanne d'Arc is a big school. They have a lot of kids over there. The parents park everywhere. I'm constantly having to ask them to move. Constantly.
Well, I can speak for myself. I've been pretty consistent about getting as much parking as we can within the regulations. That's all. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yep.
make a comment? Has anybody looked at, you have an 87.5-foot length of that side of the building on Fifth Avenue? Has anybody drawn out, that's 10 parking spaces and change, just in that length, if you just extended what you have now without really going into the backyard. A space is only 8 feet wide. I think you could do 10 8-foot spaces and still leave that area in front of the doorway open. I think right now it just isn't lined correctly, where people just kind of park haphazardly and it's not efficiently done.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Right in front of the area that you spoke of, Mr. Chairman, where there were stairs, people don't park there. The lines are there for my other areas. I really don't want anybody parking. A lot of my customers are elderly, and things like that. I don't want people parking in front of there. Even if Billy has somebody come in and he parks there, I always ask him, please be considerate, because I have people trying to scoop by and to come into the building. So that's really not a parking spot. Where I'm talking about the 5 are 2 in front of Billy and then 3 in front of, the left side of the building. So, that's not, I don't designate that as a parking, I really can't, because that's my staircase,
I think you should do that, but I think you could hatch out 7 feet in front of that doorway and still get 10 spots along that side road if you just extended what you have. It's mathematics. You have 87 feet. you only need 8 feet for a parking spot. You do extend, I mean, it doesn't solve that problem of extending over the sidewalk if there actually is one, but I would rather give that up than I would the stormwater issue that we dealt with. So you could keep, you'd extend what you have now, but you'd keep enough green space in the backyard to meet the criteria that you need to stick with. So I just think maybe because of how it was lined, or maybe not needed at one time, it wasn't done efficiently where you're not taking good advantage of what you do have for space. So just an observation.
Dennis, did you get an answer to your question on your calculations? I don't know, Joe, were you listening to what Dennis said a little while ago?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. That's correct. They need 500 square feet to meet the open space requirement, which they currently meet with that area that's not paved. So the area you're alluding to, 16 and a half by roughly 30 feet, would meet that requirement. So you could have 2 spaces roughly 20 feet in length, and then you'd have the width 16.5 there. You are supposed to meet a setback from the lot line of 3 feet under today's standards as well. So you could still have an issue in the setback from the lot line. But in terms of the green space question, the 30 by 16 and a half, that would meet 500 square feet.
Through Mr. Chairman, and also doing the math, even if you went with the 9-foot width and you allowed 6 feet for your entryway along that side, that's 9 spaces. How many spaces are you trying to get to? You're only trying to get to 8. And if you just stripe them at even 9 feet wide, you'd get one more than you're trying to get to, and you'd still have the green space preserved for the 500 square feet behind the building. So I'm exactly on what Kevin was saying earlier, that if you just were efficient with your striping, you'd get 8 spaces easily. You get 8 spaces easily, which is what you were asking for, I think.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's worth exploring. Again, we could, as members here, go back and forth all night here. I think we're all trying to come up with solutions. I think it's a positive argument right now, but again, I'd like to pass it on to the engineers department. What's the green space required? How can we make this work? That's what I'd like to see done. So I'd like to continue it and let the engineers department come up with a solution, and we'll try and sort this out. It's about all I can think of, but I'm open. Thank you very much.
Well, I would tend to agree with you. We're definitely here to work with you. This isn't, a position that, I think we all understand what the parking issue is over there. We're very sensitive to it, but just the way this, I'll call it history behind that site, tends to throw the monkey wrench in. And I know I'm struggling with a few different things there, but I'm leaning more in favor because, again, I'm a strong proponent of the parking. And I'll reiterate myself, we've done that numerous times in this board. Parking is paramount. That section of the city lacks parking. I understand the need. It's just I want to make sure that once we make this decision that it's actually reviewed as best as possible. So I don't have an issue with Corey's suggestion, but I will ask one question. So if we're going to ask for the city to weigh in and come back with some solutions, again, I go back to Kevin's comment on, the pavers versus the paving regarding the, Joe, would something like that, I know a couple of petitions, I can think of one in South Lowell, maybe another one where DPD recommended certain type of, either a paver or a certain type of construction of pavers, or as opposed to regular driveway being put in just for the runoff. Is that something, based on what we're kind of exploring right now, would the city do that type of analysis and provide it in relationship to what Corey's asking?
Well, generally, either a paver solution or a pervious asphalt, it looks very similar and acts very similar to a traditional asphalt. Just the maintenance of it is a little bit differently. They could
Right.
function in a way that would allow for stormwater to be treated more efficiently on the property than just your conventional hot top being laid down. So it could provide a solution for the stormwater if that was something the board was looking for.
Okay. Well, I think that's maybe a key piece of the whole plan that we're looking for again. Any other comments from the board members before I make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, what kind of time frame you think? Probably 30 days on this one, I'm estimating. That's my guess, though.
Joe, do you have any feel for that?
Well, it's up to the board. We do have an extra week in between this meeting and the next meeting, so we would have 3 weeks to the August 12th. There are a number of things on that agenda now at this point. There's nothing on the agenda after that. It should be the August 26th meeting.
I say we should set the 26th, Mr. Chairman, because I think there's a lot to be done here, and we want this done right, as you stated earlier. And I think there's a lot of hurdles to cross here, and I think, even 3 weeks to the next meeting, I don't think it suffice. That's just my guess. But
So if we went to the, what was
August 26th.
August 26th.
26th? I think you just heard, what we talked about. Are you willing to push this till, or continue it to the 26th so we can get a, now, so if we're gonna go to the 26th, I want to give the petition at least an opportunity to take a look at what may be proposed. Is that possible that, it's kind of like when we request things, it'd be nice to get something in front of us before the actual date. Is that going to allow enough time that at least we can get something to the petitioner they can review with DPD or whatever department's going to recommend?
The 26th it should provide enough time that any plans could be revised and brought back to the board in a timely manner for their review as well.
Okay, so I guess what I'm going to request, if both parties can have everything by at least a week before the 19th, I'll request that. We'll see what happens, but you know what I mean? I want to give
Are you suggesting that, that we talk with the engineer's office, or is the staff going to be talking with the engineer's office?
No, my understanding, if I heard it correctly through what Corey's recommendation was, is that DPD or what department's going to look at
Engineers.
this?
It should really be all. It should be DPD, the engineering office, and the
Right.
applicant.
That they would take a look at the petition and the plans and then try to come up with another rendition or revision of it.
Yes.
We would just like an opportunity to work with them.
Well, I don't have,
As they're working on this.
I certainly don't have a problem with that. Is anything on your end?
And we can take a look. It might just be worth noting down the line. Of course, it's unclear to know when, if any sidewalk is put in, but if any sidewalk is put in along Fifth Avenue, any spaces that are lined up in front of the building along Fifth Avenue are potentially going to get blocked off. That you won't be able to drive over once you have a curb reveal set 6 inches high.
Well, I guess
If there's
I can't answer that
that's
one.
another whole different,
No, but to answer your question, yes, you want to be part of the solution.
We would, because of just that we don't want to get this, have this run away from us in terms of so many changes to the spaces that are already there. I think we're open to this idea of creating some more open space at the back of the section that we were proposing to be paved.
Yep.
So I think we could certainly look at that, and if there's a possibility to create these lots and then save some of the open space in the back, then that's fine.
Yep.
And that's the kind of thing we'd like to be involved in, to see what the cost is, see what how realistic it is.
Right. I don't disagree. Again, I think the objective by all the parties is to get the best possible plan in there that works, hopefully works for this board. So any other comments before? Okay, so could I have a motion, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the matter before us is ZB 2013-21 for a special permit at 246 University Ave. Make a motion to approve continuance to our August 26, 2013 meeting.
Have a second?
Second it?
A roll call.
Mr. Hearn,
Continue to August 26th.
Mr. Bailey,
Continue to August 26th.
Mr. Belanger,
Continue.
Mr. McCarthy,
Continue to August 26th.
Mr. Perrin.
Continue to August 26th.
Okay, Ms. Hebert, we'll see you here on August 26th.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, our next order of business is other business, and seeing as we have none, any board members have anything they want to bring up? Hearing none. So, Joe, the next meeting you mentioned was August.
August 12th.
Well, 3 weeks from tonight. So we got an extra week in there, guys.
Oh, well, thank you, Corey. Thank you for the extra week
Giving you a
off.
week off, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Have a second? Good evening.